So, Hamlet. Probably one of the most famous characters ever, right? But he's also famously complicated? How do you even begin to get inside that brilliant, tortured mind? Well, turns out Shakespeare actually gave us a key, a direct line right into his thoughts. And that's what we're going to use today to unlock his story.
I mean, think about it for a second. In most books or plays, you only really see what characters do or say out loud, right? Their inner world, what's really driving them. That's often a total mystery. But Shakespeare, he had a trick up his sleeve, a really powerful tool to solve this exact problem.
And that tool is the soliloquy. You know, it's that moment when a character is all alone on stage and they just speak their thoughts out loud. It's like we get a backstage pass into their brain. And for Hamlet, these aren't just random speeches. They are literally the engine of the entire play. They're our map to his whole psychological journey. So what do you say? Let's follow that map.
All right, first up, our journey starts in a royal court that's, well, it's supposed to be in mourning. But there's also this weirdly fast wedding that just happened. And this is where we meet our guy, Prince Hamlet, and he is not having a good time.
And you can see why. I mean, the poor guy is basically drowning in grief. His dad, the king, just died, and then his mom, Gertrude, turns around and marries his uncle, Claudius, like less than a month later. For Hamlet, this is it's an unthinkable betrayal. His entire world feels rotten to the core.
And we hear it straight from him in his very first soliloquy. He gets on stage and he's already talking about wanting to die, wishing his too solid flesh would melt. He sees the whole world as this untamed garden, just overgrown with disgusting weeds. His disillusionment is just total, and it all boils down to the two men at the center of his life.
Yeah, this contrast pretty much defines his entire worldview at this point. In his mind, his dad was Hyperion, a literal sun god. And his uncle Claudius, he's a satyr, a lecherous, half-man, half-beast creature. I mean, you can't get a more extreme comparison than that. It's what's fueling all this disgust. And just when you think things can't get weirder, well, they take a supernatural turn.
Right. A ghost shows up, and it claims to be his dad's spirit. And it drops an absolute bombshell. His father didn't just die. No, he was murdered. Poisoned, in fact, by his own brother, Claudius. Suddenly, Hamlet's vague despair gets a new and frankly terrifying focus. You can just feel the shock. Hamlet immediately flips out, calling Claudius a smiling, damned villain. He makes this huge vow, right then and there, to wipe his brain clean of everything else and dedicate himself completely to one single thing, revenge. He sounds ready to go, right? All fired up, but is he really?
And boom, that vow right there, it sets up the central conflict of the entire play. It's the one question that has fascinated people for hundreds of years. If he's so sure, why on earth does he wait? Because that's what happens. Despite that fiery, passionate promise, Hamlet does nothing. He just delays. He overthinks every little thing. He gets completely trapped in this endless loop of philosophical questions and, honestly, just beating himself up. And this spiral leads him to, the most famous speech probably in the entire English language.
You know the one, to be or not to be. But look, this speech is so much more than just him thinking about suicide again. This is the absolute peak of his paralysis. He's gone way beyond his own personal grief and is now just contemplating the whole nature of human suffering itself. It's huge.
He starts listing all these universal pains we all go through, right? Oppression, scorned love, injustice, abuse of power. Stuff that makes you wish it would all just end. So he asks, why do we put up with it? And his conclusion? It's the fear of the unknown. The fear of what comes after death. That fear, he says, makes cowards of us all.
And man, does he hate himself for being one of those cowards. At one point, he sees an actor on stage just weeping for Hecuba, a completely fictional character, and he's amazed by that raw passion. Meanwhile, here he is, with a real murdered father and a real corrupted mother, and all he can do is talk. He just rips into himself for unpacking his heart with words instead of, with a sword.
Okay, but something's gotta give, right? And it does. After all this internal debate, all this delay, some random external event is finally going to push Hamlet right over the edge, past the point of no return.
So here's the scene. He's being shipped off to England, and he stumbles upon the army of this Norwegian prince, Fortinbras. They're all marching off to war. And when Hamlet finds out why they're going to war, it's the final spark, the thing that just shames him into action.
Get this, there are 20,000 men, an entire army, marching to their deaths. And for what? For, as he says, a fantasy and trick of fame. They're going to fight and die over a tiny, completely worthless patch of land in Poland. The sheer absurdity of it all just hits Hamlet like a ton of bricks.
And this is the comparison that finally breaks him. He sees Fortinbras willing to sacrifice thousands of lives for something he calls an eggshell, a piece of land not even big enough to bury the dead on. And then there's Hamlet. He has every reason in the world to act. His father was murdered, his mother's honor is corrupted, his kingdom was stolen, and yet he's done nothing. The contrast is just deeply, deeply shaming.
And there it is. That's the turning point. He realizes that true greatness isn't about having a great reason to fight. It's about fighting for honor, even over something tiny. And he finally resolves to stop thinking and start doing. Oh, from this time forth, he says, my thoughts be bloody or be nothing worth. The philosopher is officially gone. The avenger has arrived.
Okay, so let's take a step back for a second. Let's look at this whole journey we've just tracked through these incredible speeches and ask, what does it all mean for the play as a whole? What we're seeing is his entire character arc laid out right in front of us. The soliloquies let us watch him transform step by step. He starts as this grieving son, just full of passive despair. Then he becomes this introspective philosopher, totally paralyzed by his own thoughts. And finally, he emerges as a resolved avenger, committed to bloody action.
Honestly, without these moments, Hamlet would just be another bloody revenge story. Pretty simple. But the soliloquies, they give the play its incredible psychological depth. They're the moments where Shakespeare gets to explore these massive universal questions about revenge, morality, and what it even means to be human. That's what makes this play absolutely timeless.
And all this leaves us with that big central question, doesn't it? Was Hamlet's constant overthinking a tragic flaw that just led to everyone's ruin? Or is his ability to question everything, morality, action, existence itself, actually a kind of strength, maybe even a very modern one? And you know what? That's the debate that keeps this play so alive and so fascinating, even 400 years later.